Everybody, thanks for watching and thanks for taking the time to purchase and support. Welcome to the 6th book in the Biblical Bible series, which is the book of Joshua. We just completed the 5 books of Moses, which is considered to be the law. When you look at how the 66 books are broken down, they're broken down in sections. So we just finished the law. We are now beginning to get into what they call the historical or the history of the Bible, the historical parts. What they are trying to say is actual history of the Hebrews, which we understand completely as bullcrap. So it's important to note that when we get into these next, I believe, 17 books, it's considered the history. So one, when you look at the stories in these books, and we're going to go through some crazy stuff, it's clear as day. One, it's more fairy tale, fiction, which is why I always talk about the Bible being in the fiction section of in the library or in your bookstores. Clearly fiction. It is crazy and far-fetched for them to note these books as being historical. You know, historical books as if this stuff actually happened. It's crazy. So we can understand once we get into a lot of these stories that clearly this is stuff that it's not true. So if you guys hear any noise in the background, if you're picking up any low hiss or sound, I apologize for that. It's just the air conditioner. But as we go along, you can understand why preachers do not want to teach the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. Because if you start going through the book, if you go through it verse by verse, book by book, you're going to run into the problems of the Bible. You're going to run into all the evils of the Bible. And people with rational minds are not going to be able to get through some of the stuff that takes place. It's just absurd. We don't let this stuff slide in our, true lives. It's hard to accept this stuff as being fact, one, but as this powerful, good, loving God doing these crazy, sick stuff to these people. And you're going to see as we go along, a lot of the stuff that people are holding on to as far as the Bible that they believe is real and true and the so-called goodness of God, you're going to see fall apart. You're going to see God continuously do evil in the Bible as you go along. And it's going to raise questions. And it's questions that scholars and Bible believers ask all the time. How can this be a good God if he's doing these things? And anybody with common sense would say, well, it can't be. There's something more to the story. So we're going to go through a lot of this stuff. But the main thing is for you to see past the so-called historicity of the Bible and to understand that, of course, it's not history. It's bullcrap. It's bogus. But, it's going to be hard for people to see what we're seeing, to analyze the Bible in this context, the way we have been doing so far, looking at the Greeks as being the Hebrews. It's not many people who are putting that together. A few scholars did, and it's good to see that when you put in a lot of work, that other people have come to the same conclusions. But, it's not going to be easy for people to put it into the context that we're putting it into in these books. In these Bible series, because it's just far-fetched for people. People can't fathom that we're talking about the same people, the Hebrews and the Greeks. And Dr. Joseph Yehuda probably did exactly what I did doing the research, and it's one of the reasons why I actually started doing the research that way, reading his book, was, looking at the fact that if we're going to try to pick up this history and find it in real history, that we can find in books, then, it doesn't fit anybody but the Greeks. All these wars and everything that was going on around this time, the only people you find making noise is the Greeks. So then when you start to do the comparison, it's not hard. So we left off Deuteronomy, the death of Moses. Joshua is basically the new leader. God has given him, his instructions and telling him to basically go on, and continue them taking the promised land or what have you. So, as I talked about before, we understand, as I just said, this is nothing but the conquering of the Greeks, conquering African territory. And Joshua is just going to continue the same process of conquering. It's just that simple. So they're calling it the history, and you have to pay attention to that, the history. And it is history. It's just, misconstrued and scrambled and not put in put it out correctly, and you have to break it down and figure out what they're really talking about, which is what we are doing, in the video. So it is the history, and we're going to go through it and see what it's really talking about. So when you start to get into it, Joshua is just basically picking up where Moses left off. Now, a lot of you was basically asking me about which Bible am I using, and again, I told you guys before, we're going to go through it using the Masonic King James Version. You can use the King James Version as well, but the Masonic one is just the one I'm going to use because there's a lot more to it, some stuff hidden that we're going to be able to really dig into more as we go along, as I'll point out eventually, but we're going to use the King James Version. Now, it's saying here in Joshua, this is Joshua chapter 1. Now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses, for the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea, toward the going down of the sun, shall be your coast. There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. So again, common sense question, how is it that God is going to be able to give these people this land? They call it the promised land. Keep saying that it's their inheritance. And we understand an inheritance is something that's passed down from your parents, and this land didn't belong to their parents. This is something that this God is saying, which we all understand, this God being, the powers that be, saying that this is your land, go and take it. Now, the only way they can take it is to take it, to commit murder. This is where we got to cut the bullshit of the Bible and get into people's head and get them to understand what's taking place here. What are you talking about? This God is supposed to be just and loving and what have you, and the creator of everyone, when he's giving the order to go and kill his own people that he supposedly created. You have to look at the Bible or look at religion in the context that everybody is talking about today, as having this God being all-knowing, loving, or what have you. The same God who's supposed to care about everybody and all these rules supposed to be in play, telling these people to go out and murder, kill infants, which we'll get into, babies or what have you, kill them all, everything, and take this land that's promised to you. And as we're going to continue to see with these Hebrews, these people are not even following the law. So if we can say, if you want to say that God came and this is his chosen people, and God is choosing to kill all these people in this promised land because they are disobeying God, or they are worshiping false idols, or what have you, anything you want to say, what you're going to see as we go along is the Hebrews doing the exact same thing that these people who they are wiping out are supposedly doing and getting by. How is these people supposed to be special and set apart when they are clearly doing the same thing as everybody else? So this is how one of the things you can see and understand that it's bullshit. It's bogus what it's talking about, but this is important for you to know, what they're calling the history. And this is how we're going to break it down and really understand it. But clearly, you can't justify people getting land through the means of murder, which is just crazy. So, God basically tells Joshua to keep the law, coming out his mouth, to know it. To know the law, keep talking about it, meditate on it, and don't ever let the law leave his lips. And as I said, Joshua goes on to continue the conquest. So it's saying here, this is Joshua chapter 2, verse 1. And Joshua, the son of Nun, sent out of Shittim 2 men to spy secretly, saying, Go, view the land, even Jericho. And they went out, and they came unto a harlot's house, which a harlot is a prostitute, named Rahab, and lodged there. And what we're going to see in the beginning of Joshua, they're trying to take basically Jordan. I mean, this is the whole story with Jericho and everything that's going to come up here. As we get into, or as you read the first books of Joshua, not too many people are going to be able to put together what's taking place here. So, they're going to take try to take Jericho, try to basically take Jordan, but you have to understand how the story is being put together, how we are basically seeing the story of Moses over again, because Joshua is basically doing the same thing. Now what you'll see here is the Bible recycles stories. It does this a lot, and there's a reason for it, as we'll get into. But they did this before. Well, when you understand with Joseph and Jesus, which we'll get into later, of course. But you'll start to see as we go along with Joshua that a lot of the stuff that Moses did, Joshua does, and the same type of stuff that the writers wrote about far as the major things of Moses, or issues with Moses, we're going to see with Joshua. But if you remember from Joseph and New Testament Jesus, take a look at some of the stuff that is basically the same. A lot of people was trying to say that, the Jesus character, and this is one of the arguments of the Hebrews or the Jews, that the Jesus or Christ character is based off of Joseph when you look at Joseph. So we know with Joseph, you had a miracle birth. Jesus was also a miracle birth. Same thing with Joseph. Joseph had 12 brothers. Jesus had 12 disciples. Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Jesus was sold for 30 pieces of silver. So you had Judah, who suggested the sale of Joseph, and you had Judas, who suggested the sale of Jesus. Both men started their ministry at age 30. Joseph started at 30. Jesus started his ministry at age 30. So this is something a lot of people pointed out before, as them basically trying to use the Joseph character to basically, piggyback off with the creation of Jesus. And when you look at the whole thing with Moses basically leads the people out of a state of oppression. Supposedly oppression, them being oppressed in Kemet. So he leads them out of a state of oppression, and you have Joshua lead them into a state of conquest when they are conquerors and they are conquering these lands. So you have that parallel right there. You have Moses parting the sea. You have Joshua drying up the river. Remember when they coming into Jordan, basically on the way to Jericho, he dries up the river. The river runs dry for them to walk on. So you have, the parting of the water with Moses, and you have the drying of the river with Joshua. You have under Moses, the Hebrews basically disobey God. The same thing as we're going to see is going to happen under Joshua. They're going to disobey God. Under with Moses in power, Moses dies at the end of his books, which is the 5 books. It's the end of Moses. At the end of this book, as you will see, Joshua dies at the end of his book. So you have the same comparison where the Bible is basically recycling stories for a reason, and we'll get into that. But you're going to see this throughout the book. As we're going through this, you're going to see it's stuff that's going to jump out to you that you never heard of before, never seen. It's going to make you just question everything, like, why the hell didn't they tell us about this? There's so many stories within the book that is really going to help you understand it more. And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this, because until you read it all the way through and you start, going through it as if it's a one big long story, that's the only way you're going to see the contradictions, the flaws, the problems, the issues, and the hidden story that's behind the books of the Bible. So, we're going to pick up on a lot of this stuff as we're going through. So now you have Joshua sending out spies out into the land. Remember, Joshua was one of the 12 spies that Moses sent out to basically spy on Israel before. So he was one of those spies. Now he goes out, sends these spies. The spies run into a woman named Rahab, who is basically a harlot, a prostitute. She takes them in. Now she says, basically, we've heard about you. And this is one of the major parts, as I talked about before, that you got to really understand when it's talking about here the histories of the Bible. This history can only be found within the Bible. So, of course, you would think during this time where you got the Hebrews doing so much conquest and conquering that the neighboring territories and land would get wind of these Hebrews who seemingly have this God or this power behind them. You would think that everybody would know and either try to come together to do something against them or at least write about them. You will find something that a civilization put out, talking about how powerful these Hebrews is. Any other major civilization that we find in history, look at the Caesars. Look at the Greeks. Look at the Egyptians. Look at the Mayans. Look at so many civilizations that left stuff all over, that you have people from distant territories and places or what have you speaking about that specific people because they did something so amazing. So if the Hebrews was, people who was going out conquering and doing so much, you would think we would find something on them outside of the book itself, which we do not. So basically Rahab takes them in, and she basically says, I heard about you guys. I know that God is basically on your side, so I will take you in. I will hide you, and all I want is when y'all do your thing, because she knows they're going to basically destroy everything. When y'all kill everybody, just leave me and my family alone. So that's basically what she says to him. Leave me and my family alone. When y'all come in here and do your thing, I will hide y'all. I will tell y'all whatever y'all need to know in exchange for that. But you have to also remember, repeatedly, God tells them that do not leave nothing alive. Destroy everything. Everything that breatheth. Kill them all. Make no covenant with them. Remember that part. So that's basically, covenant is a deal. You might as well say. So they basically say okay, and they make a deal with Rahab to not destroy her family, what have you. And that's what come to pass. So this is something you have to look at, and really, they really want to get you guys to understand the genocide, the murder, justify it somehow of the Hebrews and what they was doing, and to try to get you to warm up to the part that eventually these people will keep disobeying God so much that they will fall. This is what you'll see that's iterated a lot, over and over again. This constant deception and constant disobeying, and I should say, of the Hebrews of God's law. So now all the scholars and people who read the book look at this point, including the Jews themselves, and say, this is unbelievable. This is a shame. And you have people who are seemingly okay. Why are they being slaughtered by God, who's supposed to be so loving and merciful?